I was always a really responsible child, so my parents never had any trouble leaving me home alone if they were going to go out for a couple of hours. I knew all about how to keep myself safe while they were gone. For example, if someone rang the doorbell, I knew never to answer it. One night, my parents had gone out to a dinner party and left me home by myself. I was excited to have the whole house to myself because it meant I could watch anything I wanted on television and didn't have to share the remote. I cooked some mac and cheese for myself and then plopped on the couch to watch my favorite show. It was after 11 p.m. when I heard a knock at the front door. I was confused because I definitely wasn't expecting anybody at that hour. I muted the TV so that whoever it was wouldn't know that there was anyone home. I then tiptoed to the door and peeked out through the peephole. A man was standing there that I didn't recognize. He wore tattered clothing and looked kind of crazy. I didn't know who he was, but I definitely wasn't going to be opening the door for him. I went back to the couch hoping he would just go away, but only minutes later he began banging again, this time harder. He was yelling curse words and saying that he knew I was in there. I was terrified but stayed on the couch completely still. Finally, there was silence, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I turned the TV back on and was starting to relax when all of a sudden, I heard a familiar, odd creaking sound coming from the kitchen. It was our doggy door that Lola would use when she wanted to go outside. I looked at Lola, who was sitting next to me on the couch, asleep, and my stomach sank. I stood up to look towards the kitchen, and the man had stuck his head through the small door. He smiled at me in a terrifying way and then said, "I told you I knew you were in here." I screamed as loud as I could and sprinted upstairs to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I didn't think the man would be able to get his entire body through the doggy door, but I wasn't going to take any risks. I hid under my bed until my parents got home. I told them what had happened, and they were very concerned. They called the police, who came to search the area. Oddly enough, they found the man in a shed in our backyard that we rarely used. We found out that he had been squatting in the shed and spying on us for weeks. He watched my parents leave and saw that I wasn't with them. The police said that if he had managed to get inside the house, he would have likely either killed or kidnapped me. My parents didn't leave me home alone for a long time after that. My parents are divorced, so in high school, I lived with just my mom. My older sister was off at college, and so she was rarely home. My mom worked 2 different jobs, so she was gone a lot during the week, leaving me at home alone. I didn't mind. While it got lonely sometimes, I knew my mom was just doing what she had to do to support the family. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. It was a typical evening. My mom was at work, and I was studying for a major math test I was having the next day. I spent hours studying, only taking a couple of breaks to FaceTime my friends and ask them questions about some math problems I didn't understand. Time passed quickly, and before long, I glanced up at the clock and saw that it was nearing midnight. I groaned, knowing that I would have to be awake in 6 hours for school. I packed up my backpack and got ready to go to sleep. I plugged my cell phone into the charger by my nightstand and climbed into bed. I was nervous for the test the next day, so even though my eyelids were heavy, I was having trouble falling asleep. I was half conscious when I heard noises from downstairs and realized my mom must have gotten home. There was a lot of slamming cabinets and doors, and I wondered why my mom was making so much noise. She knew I had school the next day and would have to be up early. My phone left off a vibration, signifying that I had received a text message. I groggily reached over to pick it up. It was a message from my mom. It read, "I should be home in about an hour." My heart dropped to my stomach and I was instantly wide awake. If my mom wasn't home, who was in our house? I thought there was a chance that my older sister had decided to stop by the house to surprise my mom, which was something she would do from time to time. I opened my bedroom door as quietly as I possibly could and tiptoed into the hallway. I then went to the banister and peeked over the side to see who was downstairs. I saw a man, probably in his early 40s. He wore all black and had a hood over his head. He was holding up a garbage bag and going through drawers, pulling out anything of value and sticking it in the bag. I knew instantly that we were being robbed. I decided that the best thing to do was just go back to my room, lock the door, and call 911. I turned to move towards my bedroom, but to my horror, the floor creaked. The man made eye contact with me and then turned and ran towards me. I screamed and sprinted towards my room. I was almost to the door when I tripped over a pair of slippers and fell to the ground. I began crawling towards my bedroom door, but the man grabbed my ankles and pulled me towards him. The man picked me up effortlessly and sat me on a nearby chair. He grabbed duct tape and put it over my mouth so I couldn't speak. He then tied my arms and legs down to the chair. I was having a major panic attack and could only pray that this wasn't going to be the night I died. I watched as the man continued to go through the rooms and pack more of our belongings into his bag. I hoped he would simply take the stuff and go without hurting me. Finally, he seemed to have been satisfied with what he gathered and he went back to me. He looked at me for a long moment and then reached into his pocket, revealing a gun. I thrashed around trying to free myself when all of a sudden I watched the man stumble to the ground and go unconscious. At first I was confused about what had happened, but then I saw my mom standing behind him holding a frying pan in one hand. She had slammed it into his head. She picked up the gun and expertly unloaded it, something she had learned back in the day when she used to go hunting with my dad. My mom then ran to me and freed me. Once she had removed the duct tape from my mouth, she asked me if I was okay. All I could do was nod yes. She grabbed my arm and pulled me into her bedroom and locked the door. She called 911 and we huddled together, trembling until the police arrived. They took the man into custody, and it turned out that he had been wanted by the police for a long time. He was known for being violent and not caring about human life. I still shudder to think of that day and what would have happened if my mom hadn't come home right then. One evening, I was home alone and talking to my friend Allie on FaceTime. I was sitting at the kitchen table near the back door that leads out to the backyard. Allie and I were laughing and having a lighthearted conversation when all of a sudden Allie stopped talking mid-sentence and said, who is that? She pointed behind me. I turned and looked, but didn't see anything. She told me she saw a figure in my yard, someone wearing a ski mask. At first, I thought she was just trying to prank me because she swore she wasn't. I turned back, and this time I saw him. It was a man off in the distance, half hidden behind a tree. He was staring into the house at me. I asked Allie what I should do, and she told me to close the blinds and make sure all the doors were locked. I did exactly that. She then told me to check back in 5 minutes, and if the man wasn't gone, I should call the police. After 5 painful minutes had passed, I finally peeked back outside, and I didn't see anything. I breathed a sigh of relief, assuming he had left. It was probably just some neighborhood teenager messing around. It was getting late at this point, so I got off the FaceTime call with Allie and went upstairs to start getting ready for bed. I then plopped in bed and decided to read a little bit until I was ready to fall asleep. I was only a few pages in when I started hearing a weird creaking sound from outside my window. I ignored it, figuring it was just the wind blowing the trees. But then I began to hear a strange tapping against my window pane. I got out of bed and walked towards the window. I then pulled back the curtain to peek out. I gasped as I realized I was face to face with the masked man. I stumbled away from the window, pulling the curtain closed. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 and then called my parents. Police got to my house quickly and searched the property. They found him in a neighbor's yard nearby. It turned out that he was a notorious peeping Tom and had been looking into people's houses and spying on women and children for days. He was a serious creep, and I am so relieved he's now behind bars. What would you have done in this situation? Drop a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe.